Romans 11. I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means. Right there, we should know that God still loves the Israelites. They're not a hated people by God. By no means. I am an Israelite myself. That's what Paul says, speaking of himself. A descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people whom he foreknew. Don't you know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah? How he appealed to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars. I am the only one left, and they are trying to kill me. And what was God's answer to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Now, I've heard this argument here before in picking on prophets, saying, see, prophets don't know everything. Prophets don't know everything. Prophets know, of course, what God reveals to them. Just because you're a prophet doesn't mean you just automatically know. There are prophets who can see into the spirit realm like a lot. So what you see here, though, is that Elijah was saying, they have killed your prophets. And he's saying he's the only prophet that's left. And then God says, I have reserved for myself 7,000. He didn't reserve 7,000 prophets. He reserved 7,000 people. So that was my comeback to this person of saying, hey, it's not all the believers in God who are slaughtered. So there was a little bit of misunderstanding as far as I was concerned. Verse 5, so too at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer by works. If it were, grace would no longer be grace. And I mean, that right there is just, the crux of it all that we've been reading through Romans, is that Romans is trying to expose to us that it's salvation by grace, not by works, which makes Christianity the most attractive religion, if you will, even though it's not a religion. Verse 7, what then? What Israel sought so earnestly it did not obtain, but the elect did. The elect did. The others were hardened. As it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes so that they could not see, and ears so that they could not hear to this very day. So here's a bit of a mystery as to why the Israelites still have such a hard heart. This is intentional by God. May their table, and David says, may their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution for them. May their eyes be darkened so they cannot see, and their backs be bent forever. Again, I ask, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. And remember verse 1, did God reject his people? By no means. Verse 11, rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. So you see how clever God was? He was trying to woo his people, even with envy, to come to him. But if their transgression, meaning the Israelites, means riches for the world, and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their fullness bring? Again, God is so smart. But see, I'll pause right here. In the natural, with human perspective and human intelligence, in the human mind, we look upon situations that are so grievous and confusing, and one would never attribute that to God because it violates the holiness or the goodness of God in our minds. But God being so clever, he can make a situation in man's opinion awful and terrible looking, but have such a good result assigned to it to bring about. This is why we need to just trust in God, period. Verse 13, I am talking to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I make much of my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. So even Paul's up to the same trick there. For if their rejection is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? Again, just furthering my point. Are you in a situation that makes you say, God, why are you allowing this? Like, it confuses you of your view of God. Well, again, the Bible is God's character and nature exposed to us so we can learn him, right? Here you're being exposed to something, again, and I won't go too deep because I already just did a few minutes ago, something that is confusingly awkward and something that we wouldn't assign to God situation, but yet God is behind it all, bringing about something good. Are you involved in something like that? Think about that. Why this? God, where are you? Well, I do this, I do that. But remember, it's not I do this, I do that. That's works. No, it's like, you know, I've been a Christian my whole life. I've done this and I've eaten right, but I still get sick and all this stuff. Whoa. You don't know what God is doing with your situation. So here is proof that God can allow something that even threatens his good character in front of mankind to bring about something good. So this is something you should remember, how he can operate like this. Verse 16, if the pot of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. So he's saying that Israel is not rejected and that they are holy, and how much more everyone else. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not boast over those branches. He's basically saying that the Gentiles are branches that have been, that are wild branches, right? That were grafted in, meaning there was a cut on the olive tree and the branch was cut and you just marry them together, tape them up, or, you know, keep them together and they begin to grow together. Like, you know, I'm not a gardener here, but I assume this is this and this is, and it's stacked up. It's like spliced and then they just begin to grow. That's who we, the Gentiles, were. And he's telling us not to go to the Israelites and be like, ha, look at us now. He's saying, hey, easy. If you do consider this, you do not support the root, but the root supports you. So he's saying, calm down, don't be prideful that you're saved and God's choosing you as well. To the Israelites, remember that the Israelites are the root and the root supports the branches. They were the chosen ones. We were grafted into that chosenness. Verse 19, you will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Yeah. It's sort of like, let me break the branch of Israel off so that there can be a piece of the branch left so I can take another branch and stick it to that and have them get in. Just see, remember that lesson I was telling you about to show you God's character, of how we can use something that in the eyes of man could defy his good nature and character? This is the summary of that. Branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Why would you break a perfectly good branch off, right? Confusing, right? But just say this to yourself. God could cause something to break or something bad to happen so that something good can grow out of it. This is the summary. Verse 20, granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. Not like, fear, but reverent. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. So like that fear also is, in light of this verse, 21, it's that fear is, work out your salvation in fear and trembling. In other words, take it serious. It's not some joke. Maintain it. Respect what you have, honor what you have, do your part. Don't just think, you're just going to coast on by. That's how I'm seeing this. Verse 22, consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. You can be saved, but then you can eventually be cut off if you walk away from God. It says, continue in his kindness. Continue in the humility of his nature and character, also within inside of you. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. He's talking about the Israelites. Verse 24, after all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature, and contrary to nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? See, now let me speak this to the Israelites, to the Jews, the Jewish people of today. This is what God is saying to you. God has never rejected you. You are still his people. Accept his son, because it's the only way back to him. Not through the law. How's the law been working out for you? How's that been going? Have you upheld the law entirely? No. It's by grace, not by works. Jesus did the works. Just take a break, a vacation from all the labor. Jesus did it for you. God's not mad at you. Look at what's being read here. You could easily be joined back in. Verse 25, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob, and this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. So, when we get frustrated with the Israelites and the Jewish people saying, why don't they just see? Just remember this, that they're the root, they support us. Just remember this, that God will have mercy on them. God will soften their hearts, and they will return to him. And so we should be praying for this. As far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs. For God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. Now, a lot of people throw this verse around, verse 29, for God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. They usually quote that. That's like a famous quote that people use when they see a minister of God, gone astray or something like that, or in still functioning, like they question that. And then it's also a thing that I've seen where people will comfort themselves when they begin to live a lifestyle of bad choices, of sin, and they comfort themselves saying, okay, God won't take this away from me. I can still keep this going even though I do this, like a bit of an excuse, like a false excuse. Yes, this is true, but remember, in the end, some will say, God, I cast out demons, I healed the sick in your name, I preached in your name, I did this in your name, this and that. And God's going to say, hey, whoa, depart from me, I never knew you. Just because your gifts just because your gifts are irrevocable, it doesn't mean that you can't be cut off, as we read here earlier in the chapter. Your gifts is a grace that you're enjoying. It's not something that you earned. Remember Esau and Jacob and Esau. Remember them? Remember what the verse said? It says, before the twins were born, before they could do any good. Going back to chapter 9, verse 11. Before they did anything good, in order that God's purpose and election might stand, not by works, but by him who calls. The older will serve the younger. So your gifts are works that God is doing through you for the sake of the kingdom, but you shouldn't hide behind your gifts thinking you're safe. No, it's about Christ in you and Christ wanting to be in you, meaning a safe place for him, which is your heart to dwell, meaning your heart is free from sin and sinful desires so that he can be fully active in and through your heart. Verse 30, just as you who were at one time disobedient to God have now received mercy as a result of their disobedience. Do you see that? They disobeyed, and then we received mercy. So they too have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you. Man, that's just like some crazy clever stuff God's got going on up his sleeves. So they too have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you. So their disobedience caused you mercy, and now your mercy will become their obedience. For God has bound all men over to disobedience so that he may have mercy on them all. If God doesn't have mercy on you, you're condemned to hell. And in order that he can have mercy on everyone, he said all of them are all disobedient. Again, stuff that's mysteriously hidden. And meditate on that more. See what God can bring to you and reveal to you what truly cleverness he had up his sleeve and pulled off. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. Yeah, there you go. His riches are so deep in wisdom and knowledge, how unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. I mean, this is kind of just like what I've been saying, like the cleverness, the intelligence and the master moves. You know, people say 3D chess. This is like a million chess. Who has known the mind of the Lord? Or who has been his counselor? Wow, this is humbling. Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. Wow. I'm left with just wow. What a mighty God we serve.